Wealthy CEO left his wife and kids for side chick. 6 years later he came back knocking. The knock on my door was soft, almost apologetic. I opened it, and there he stood. The man who once threw me and our 3 babies out of our home like we were nothing. Julian looked at me with hollow eyes. His expensive suit hung loose on a frame that had clearly seen better days. He tried to smile, but it came out broken. "Please, Isabel, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe of my beautiful Victorian home. The morning sun caught the chandelier behind me, casting rainbows across the marble floor. My home, the one I bought with my own money. "You need to talk to me?" I said, keeping my voice calm. After 6 years of silence? After missing birthdays, Christmases, piano recitals, and every single moment that mattered? He flinched like I had struck him. "I know I have no right to be here." "You're absolutely correct. You have no right. So why are you here, Julian?" His voice cracked when he answered. "Because Victoria's gone. She took everything. The company's bankrupt. I've lost it all, Isabel. Everything I chose over you and the kids. It's all gone." I studied him for a long moment. This broken shell of a man. 6 years ago he had stood in our living room, holding divorce papers, telling me I wasn't good enough for his world. Now he stood on my doorstep, destroyed by the woman he chose instead of his family. "And you thought you'd come here for what exactly? Sympathy? Forgiveness? A place to crash while you rebuild? No. I just needed you to know that I was wrong. About everything." From inside the house, I heard my daughter Sophie practicing piano. The same daughter whose birth he had missed because of a business call. She was playing Claire de Lune, and she was brilliant. "Do you hear that?" I asked him. He nodded, tears starting to stream down his weathered face. "That's Sophie. She's 6 years old now. She plays piano like an angel. She reads at a 5th grade level. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. And do you know what else?" He shook his head, unable to speak. "She doesn't know who you are. None of them do. You're not their father. You're just the man whose DNA they carry. Because being a father means showing up, and you never did." I stepped back and began to close the door. "Wait," he said desperately, his hand reaching out but not quite touching the door. "Can I at least see them? Just once?" I paused, considering. Then I called over my shoulder. "Children, come here please. There's someone at the door." And that's when this story really begins. Because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Especially not him. But to understand how sweet this moment of justice tastes, you need to know the whole story. You need to know how a small-town librarian married a millionaire CEO, how a snake in designer heels destroyed a perfect family, and how a single mother with nothing built an empire that made her betrayer's success look like pocket change. If you have ever been told you were not good enough, this story is for you. If you have ever been replaced, discarded, or thrown away like garbage, stay with me. Because I'm about to show you what happens when the woman everyone underestimated decides to rise so high that the people who destroyed her need a telescope just to see her feet. Hit that like button right now if you believe the best revenge is not bitterness, but success. And subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories, because we are about to take you on a journey that will remind you of your power. This is the story of Isabel Monroe. And trust me when I say, you won't believe where this goes. Let's go back to the beginning. Back to when love felt like magic and promises felt unbreakable. 7 years ago, Isabel Monroe was a small-town librarian who believed in the kind of love she read about in classic novels. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery. Every morning she woke up to the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls. Her life was simple, predictable, and completely her own. She spent her days surrounded by books in the Hartford Public Library. It was an old building with high ceilings, wooden floors that creaked in all the right places, and the kind of peaceful quiet that made people whisper even when they didn't have to. Isabel loved her job. She loved recommending the perfect book to patrons. She loved the story hour she held for children every Thursday afternoon. She loved the way old books smelled and the weight of a hardcover in her hands. Her friends told her she needed to get out more. To date. To find someone. "I'm perfectly happy," she would tell them with a smile. "I have my books, my little apartment, my independence. What more could I need?" Then October arrived with its falling leaves and early darkness. And with it, came Julian Pierce. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Rain drummed against the tall windows of the library, creating that cozy atmosphere that made Isabel grateful to be inside. She was shelving returned books in the fiction section when she heard the door chime. She looked up and saw him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair just beginning to show distinguished gray at the temples. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Steel gray eyes that looked tired despite their beauty, like someone who had been searching for something for a very long time. He approached the circulation desk, and Isabel felt her heart do something strange in her chest. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was smooth and deep. "I'm looking for something rare. A first edition Hemingway if you have one." Isabel set down her stack of books and walked to the desk. She was suddenly very aware of her simple cotton dress, her sensible flats, the reading glasses perched on her nose. "We have a rare books collection," she said, proud that her voice came out steady. "But I need to ask what you're really looking for." He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "I told you. Hemingway. First edition if possible." She smiled, recognizing the look in his eyes. She had seen it 1,000 times. "No, you're looking for something authentic, something real, something that reminds you that life exists outside of whatever pressure is chasing you." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. It was a real laugh, unguarded and genuine. "How did you know that?" "Because people don't usually come to small public libraries looking for first editions. They go to auction houses or specialty dealers. You came here for the atmosphere, for the peace, for something that feels real." He extended his hand across the desk. "I'm Julian Pierce." She took his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. "Isabel Monroe, head librarian." "Well, Isabel Monroe, I think you've already given me exactly what I came looking for, but I'd still love to see that rare books collection if you're willing to show me." She led him to the climate-controlled room where they kept the special collections. As they walked, he told her he was in town for business meetings. Something about expanding his tech company into the New England market. She half listened, more aware of his presence beside her than his actual words. In the rare books room, she showed him their modest but respectable collection. He picked up a worn copy of For Whom the Bell Tolls and carefully turned the pages. "This isn't a first edition," he observed. "No, but it's a 1942 printing. Second year of publication. Look at the inscription inside." He opened to the title page and read the faded handwriting aloud. "To my beloved James, who went off to war believing in heroes. May you come home still believing in love. Your darling Elizabeth, 1943. Julian's voice caught slightly on the last words. "Someone donated this?" he asked quietly. "James never came home," Isabel said softly. "Elizabeth donated his entire collection when she moved to a nursing home. She said she wanted his books to bring other people the joy they brought him." Julian carefully closed the book and set it down with reverence. "That's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Most real love stories are," Isabel said. He turned to look at her directly. "Are you free for dinner tonight, Isabel?" The question caught her completely off guard. "I don't even know you." Then dinner is the perfect opportunity to change that. Unless you have a policy against dining with patrons who come in asking for Hemingway when they really need peace. She knew she should say no. Everything about this man screamed different world, different life, different everything. But something in his eyes made her want to say yes. Something vulnerable and honest that seemed at odds with his expensive suit and obvious wealth. "I finish work at 6, she heard herself say. "Perfect. Do you like Italian?" That dinner changed everything. Julian took her to a small family-owned restaurant, not the expensive place she had been dreading. Over pasta and red wine, they talked for 3 hours straight. He told her about building his company from a startup in his garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. But he didn't brag. Instead, he talked about the pressure, the loneliness of success, the way his life had become consumed by board meetings and profit margins. "I look around sometimes and wonder when I stopped living for myself and started living for quarterly earnings reports," he admitted. "And what did you used to live for?" she asked. He thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, I don't remember anymore. That's the problem." She told him about her simple life. The joy she found in connecting readers with the perfect book. The Thursday story hours where children sat cross-legged on the floor, completely absorbed in tales of adventure and magic. the peaceful solitude of her small apartment. "Your life sounds perfect," he said, and there was no condescension in his voice. Just genuine longing. "It's perfect for me. But I imagine it would seem pretty boring to someone who runs a tech empire." "Isabel," he said, leaning forward with intensity in his gray eyes. "Sitting here with you, talking about books and story hour and the way you describe autumn in your neighborhood, this is the first time in years I've felt like I could breathe. You have no idea how rare that is. How precious." She felt something shift in her chest. A door opening that she had not even realized was closed. They saw each other every day for the next 2 weeks while Julian was in town for business. Coffee before her morning shift, lunch in the park surrounded by October leaves, dinners that stretched into the night. On their 8th date, they were walking through the botanical gardens. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Isabel's canvas sneakers crunched on fallen leaves, while Julian's expensive leather shoes walked beside her. She finally voiced the fear that had been growing in her heart. "Julian, this has been wonderful, but you're going back to Boston in 4 days. You have a life there. A company. A world that I'm not part of." He stopped walking and turned to face her. He took both her hands in his. "Isabel, I have spent the last 10 years building a company, making money, collecting things that are supposed to matter. And I have never, not once, felt the way I feel when I'm with you." "What do you feel?" she whispered. "Like I finally understand what I've been searching for. Like all the success and money and achievement means nothing if I'm not sharing it with someone who sees me. Not Julian Pierce, CEO. Just me. Julian. The guy who actually prefers small Italian restaurants to 5-star dining. Who would rather walk through falling leaves than attend another cocktail party. Who wants to wake up next to someone who cares about story hour more than stock prices." He cupped her face in his hands. "Come to Boston with me. Or I'll move here. I don't care. I just know that I've spent 2 weeks falling completely in love with you, and I'm not willing to walk away from that." Tears filled her eyes. "You barely know me. I know everything that matters. I know you're kind. I know you light up when you talk about books. I know you remember the name of every child who comes to story hour. I know you leave quarters on the children's shelf so kids whose parents can't afford the late fees won't be scared to return their books. I know your heart, Isabel. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever encountered." She kissed him then, standing in the garden surrounded by autumn glory, and felt her entire life shift on its axis. 3 months later, Julian proposed on Christmas Eve in her tiny apartment above the bakery. There was no expensive restaurant, no public display, just the two of them, hot chocolate, and a ring that took her breath away. "Marry me, Isabel Monroe. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that real love isn't about what you can buy or what world you come from. It's about finding someone who makes you remember how to breathe." She said yes through happy tears. But not everyone was happy about their engagement. Julian's business partner, Theodore Grant, made his disapproval crystal clear at the engagement party Julian's company threw. Theodore cornered Julian by the bar while Isabel chatted with some of Julian's employees across the room. "You're making a mistake," Theodore said bluntly. He was a barrel-chested man with sharp eyes and sharper instincts for business. "She's a small-town librarian, Julian. Sweet, I'm sure, but completely unprepared for your world." "She's prepared for my life," Julian corrected. "And that's all that matters, is it?" Theodore took a sip of his scotch. "Because your life includes board meetings with investors who expect a certain image. Charity galas where connections are made and deals are brokered. A social circle that will eat her alive if she can't navigate it properly. Isabel is brilliant and genuine. That's worth more than all the social navigation in the world." Theodore shook his head. "Genuine doesn't close deals. Genuine doesn't impress the people who can make or break your next round of funding. I'm not saying she's not a lovely person. I'm saying she's not equipped for this life. She'll hold you back, make you soft, and eventually, you'll resent her for it." "Then I'll resent her," Julian said firmly. "But I won't lose her." Theodore smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "We'll see." They married in a small ceremony that scandalized half of Julian's business associates. Instead of a grand cathedral, Isabel chose a historic chapel with stained glass windows and wooden pews worn smooth by generations. Instead of hundreds of guests, they invited 50 people who actually mattered to them. Isabel wore a simple ivory dress that cost a fraction of what Julian's world expected. But when she walked down the aisle toward him, Julian's eyes filled with tears. "You look like every dream I never knew I had," he whispered when she reached him. "And you look like my forever," she whispered back. The vows they exchanged felt sacred. When Julian promised to love and cherish her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, his voice rang with absolute conviction. "I do," he said. "Forever, completely, without reservation, I do." When they kissed as husband and wife, sealing promises that felt unbreakable, their small gathering erupted in applause. But all Isabel could hear was the sound of her own heart singing. Their honeymoon in Paris was pure magic. They walked along the Seine like lovers in a classic film. They got lost in the winding streets of Montmartre on purpose, just to discover hidden cafes and street musicians. Julian bought her favorite paintings from small galleries without looking at price tags, simply because he loved the way her eyes lit up. One night they lay on their hotel balcony wrapped in blankets, watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle against the dark sky. "Promise me something," Isabel said softly. "Anything in this world or the next," Julian replied, kissing her shoulder. "Promise me that no matter what anyone says, no matter how hard they try to convince you I don't belong in your world, we'll never let them win. Promise me our love will always be stronger than their doubts." Julian rolled over to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Isabel Pierce, I promise you that nothing and no one will ever come between us. What we have isn't just rare, it's revolutionary. The whole world can line up against us and they'll fail, because our love isn't built on convenience or social status, it's built on truth, and truth always wins." She believed him with her whole heart. When they returned from Paris, Julian bought them a beautiful colonial home in the suburbs. Not a mansion, as Isabel had gently insisted she would feel lost in something too grand. It was a 3-bedroom house with a wraparound porch, a backyard with old oak trees, and enough space to feel like a real home without feeling like a museum. Julian surprised her by converting one of the bedrooms into a library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall. He filled it with first editions, rare finds, and all of her favorite novels. "Now you can have story hour whenever you want," he told her, as she stood in the doorway crying happy tears. Their first year of marriage was everything Isabel had dreamed marriage could be. Julian made it home for dinner every night. They cooked together, laughing when recipes went wrong. They read books aloud to each other on Sunday mornings. They made love like newlyweds who could not believe their luck. And then Isabel discovered she was pregnant. She took 3 tests to be sure before telling Julian. Then she planned the perfect reveal. She wrapped a tiny pair of baby shoes in a box and presented it to him after dinner. "What's this?" he asked, smiling as he unwrapped it. The moment he saw the shoes, his hands froze. He looked up at her with wonder. "Are you serious? Isabel, are you telling me we're having a baby?" "We're having a baby," she confirmed, laughing and crying at once. Julian let out a whoop of pure joy that probably woke the neighbors. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around their living room. "We're having a baby. We're going to be parents. You're going to be the most amazing mother." He knelt down and pressed his hands gently against her still flat stomach. "Hello, little miracle," he whispered. "This is your daddy. And I already love you more than I knew was possible." Lily Rose Pierce was born on a snowy January morning after 12 hours of labor. She weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and had her father's steel gray eyes and her mother's gentle spirit. Julian was there for every moment of labor. He held Isabel's hand through contractions. He whispered encouragement when she was exhausted. And when Lily finally arrived, crying her first breath, Julian sobbed openly. "She's perfect," he said, cradling his daughter with reverence. "Isabel, look at what we made. Look at this perfect little person." Isabel had never seen such pure joy on another human's face. "You've given me everything I never knew I needed," he told her, kissing her forehead while Lily slept against his chest. Everything. Being parents transformed them. Their house filled with laughter and midnight feedings and the sweet chaos of new parenthood. Julian proved to be a natural father. He changed diapers at 3 in the morning without complaint. He walked the floors with a fussy Lily, singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. "I never knew I could love anything this much," he confessed one night, as they stood together watching Lily sleep in her crib. "Now you know how I feel about you," Isabel replied. "And now you know how I feel about both of you." When Lily was 18 months old, Isabel became pregnant again. This time with a boy they would name Oliver. 2 kids, Julian said, his eyes alight with dreams. A girl and a boy. We're going to have the perfect little family. Oliver William Pierce was born during a thunderstorm in August. He arrived with a lusty cry that announced his personality from the start. He had Isabel's chestnut hair and Julian's determined chin. Our family is complete, Isabel said as Julian sat on the hospital bed beside her. Lily playing quietly with her dolls in the chair while newborn Oliver nursed. This is what I was meant for, Julian agreed. You, them, this beautiful ordinary life. Not board meetings and profit margins. This, right here. This is everything. For 3 perfect years, their life was heaven wrapped in ordinary moments that felt extraordinary. Julian built a playhouse in the backyard for Lily. He taught Oliver to kick a soccer ball before the boy could even walk steadily. They had family dinners every night, weekend pancake breakfasts, bedtime stories that Julian read with different voices for every character. Isabel went back to work part-time at the library, bringing the children with her for story hour. Watching Julian sit cross-legged on the floor with Lily and Oliver while she read to all the children was one of her favorite sights in the world. Look at you, she teased him once. Big shot CEO sitting on the floor of a public library. Best seat in the house, he replied, not a trace of irony in his voice. Everything was perfect. Until the Tuesday morning in spring when Poison walked through the door wearing designer heels. Her name was Victoria Ashford, and she entered their lives with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. It was a regular Tuesday morning executive meeting at Pierce Technology. Julian sat at the head of the conference table, reviewing quarterly reports, when Theodore Grant walked in with a woman who commanded immediate attention. She was striking in a calculated way. Platinum blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, emerald green eyes that assessed everything at once, a designer suit that probably cost more than some people's monthly salary. Everything about her screamed ambition and polish. Julian, Theodore said with obvious pride, I'd like you to meet Victoria Ashford, our new chief marketing officer. Julian stood and extended his hand professionally. Ms. Ashford, welcome to the team. Victoria's handshake was firm, her smile practiced to perfection. Mr. Pierce, she said smoothly, I've heard so much about you. Theodore says you're the visionary behind this empire, but that you've been, how did he put it, domesticated in recent years. The word hung in the air like an insult disguised as observation. Julian withdrew his hand perhaps a fraction sooner than politeness required. My priorities have evolved to include things that matter more than quarterly earnings. My family is my greatest achievement. How refreshing, Victoria murmured. But her tone suggested she found it anything but refreshing. Over the following weeks, Victoria executed a campaign that had nothing to do with marketing the company and everything to do with marketing herself as indispensable to Julian's success. She started scheduling early morning meetings, AM breakfast strategy sessions that required Julian's presence before he would normally leave for home. These meetings cut into his time making pancakes with the kids while Isabel got ready for work. I'm sorry, sweetheart, Julian told Isabel the 3rd time it happened. Victoria says these international clients can only meet before the markets open. I'll be home for dinner. I promise. But dinner time started shifting too. Victoria arranged late afternoon calls with West Coast investors that ran past 6 o'clock. Then 7. Then 8. Daddy, when are you coming home? Lily would ask on the phone, her little voice sad. Soon, princess. Daddy has just a little more work. Save me a plate, okay? But by the time he arrived, the kids were already in bed. Isabel would be cleaning up from dinner, trying not to show her disappointment. How was your day? Julian would ask, kissing her cheek absently while checking his phone. Fine. The kids missed you at dinner. Lily made you a drawing. That's sweet. I'll look at it tomorrow. Except tomorrow brought more early meetings, more late calls, more times, when Victoria needed just 5 more minutes that turned into hours. You should meet her, Julian suggested one evening, seemingly oblivious to the growing chasm between them. Victoria's brilliant. She's doubled our client base in 6 months. You'd actually like her. She has a degree in literature from Yale. You two could talk books. But when Julian insisted on hosting a dinner party so Isabel could meet Victoria and some of his colleagues, Isabel recognized immediately what her husband, in his naive goodness, could not see. This woman had not come to talk about books. She had come to stake a claim. Isabel spent all day preparing for the dinner party. She made Julian's favorite roast chicken. She cleaned the house until it sparkled. She arranged fresh flowers on the table. She even wore the emerald necklace Julian had given her for their anniversary. When the doorbell rang at 7, Isabel opened it to find Victoria standing there with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Isabel's dress. "You must be Isabel," Victoria said with a smile sharp enough to cut. "What a charming home you have." The way she said charming made it sound like quaint and inadequate. "Thank you," Isabel replied warmly, refusing to be intimidated in her own home. "Please come in." Victoria entered, like she was evaluating real estate. Her eyes catalogued everything. The family photos on the walls. The children's toys in the basket by the couch. The well-loved furniture that was comfortable rather than impressive. "So cozy," Victoria observed. "Julian's always talking about how much he enjoys the simplicity here." Simplicity. As if their life was a consolation prize. The dinner was excruciating. Victoria dominated every conversation with stories of exclusive parties, influential connections, business triumphs that made Isabel's quiet days seem embarrassingly small by comparison. She would name drop casually. "Oh, when I was having drinks with the governor," or "my friend who summers in the Hamptons." Each story a subtle reminder that she operated in circles Isabel would never access. Theodore Grant, who had arrived with his wife, seemed to enjoy watching the dynamic. He would catch Victoria's eye across the table and smile knowingly. "Isabel," Victoria said sweetly as dessert was served, "Julian mentioned you work at the library. That must be so fulfilling." "It is," Isabel replied. "I love connecting people with books that change their perspective." "And where did you study?" Victoria asked, already knowing the answer. "State University. I majored in library science and literature." "How practical," Victoria said with that razor smile. "Not everyone needs an Ivy League education to find fulfillment. Some people are perfectly happy with simpler aspirations." The insult was delivered so smoothly that Julian, engaged in conversation with Theodore about a business deal, missed it entirely. But Isabel felt it land like a knife between her ribs. After the guests left and the children were asleep, Isabel cleaned the kitchen in silence. Julian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "That went well, don't you think? Victoria was impressed with you." "Was she?" Isabel kept washing dishes. "Of course. She told me you're exactly what she expected. Sweet and genuine. Sweet and genuine. Code words for simple and naive." "Julian," Isabel said carefully, "did you notice how she spoke to me tonight?" "What do you mean?" "The way she made it clear that I don't belong in your world. That my education wasn't good enough. That our life is simple compared to hers." Julian laughed, not unkindly. "Honey, you're reading too much into it. Victoria's just confident because of her background. She didn't mean anything by it. She meant every word of it." Isabel turned to face him. "I don't trust her, Julian. You don't even know her." "I know enough. I know she looks at you like a possession she wants to acquire. I know she's systematically taking up more and more of your time. I know you've missed family dinner 4 times this week, because of meetings she scheduled." Julian sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. "She's doing her job. An important job that's bringing in millions. I'm sorry I've been working late, but this is what pays for this house, for the kids' future, for everything. I didn't marry you for this house or the money. I married you for you. For the man who used to rush home to read bedtime stories. Who made pancakes with the kids on Saturday mornings. Who said family was more important than quarterly earnings. And family is still important," Julian said defensively. "But I also have responsibilities. Victoria understands that. She understands the pressure I'm under." The words hit Isabel like a slap. "Victoria understands," as if his own wife didn't. "Of course she does," Isabel said quietly. "She's exactly what Theodore said you needed, isn't she? Someone from your world who gets it." "That's not what I meant." But it was too late. The words were out there, hanging between them like poison gas. Over the next 6 months, the poison spread. Victoria had a gift for private conversations with Julian. Moments when she would express concern about his well-being, his stress levels, his future. "Julian, you seem tired lately," she said during one of their breakfast meetings. "Does Isabel understand the pressure you're under? I worry that she might not fully grasp what it takes to maintain success at this level." "She works incredibly hard raising our children," Julian defended. Of course, Victoria soothed. But children need more than just a present mother. They need a mother who can open doors for them, who has connections, who understands the world they'll need to navigate. Small-town values are sweet, but are they enough for children who will inherit a tech empire? The seed of doubt was planted expertly. Another time, Victoria mentioned over lunch, "You know, Julian, I've been thinking about your potential. You could expand this company nationally, internationally, but it requires total commitment. The kind of focus that's difficult to maintain when you're rushing home for bedtime stories. My kids need their father. Do they need their father, or do they need their father to secure their future? The best gift you can give them is building something so successful that they never have to struggle. Sometimes that requires sacrifice in the present for gain in the future." Each conversation was a carefully placed stone, building a wall between Julian and the life he had chosen, making him question whether the contentment he felt was actually complacency, whether the love he treasured was actually a limitation holding him back from his true potential. And then came the day that changed everything. Isabel discovered she was pregnant with their third child. She sat on the bathroom floor of their home, looking at the positive test, and felt joy mixed with fear in equal measure. Joy because she loved being a mother. Fear because her husband had become a stranger who barely made it home for dinner anymore. She waited until Julian came home that night. It was almost 10 o'clock. The kids had been asleep for hours. "Julian, we need to talk." He looked up from his phone, distracted. "Can it wait? I have an early meeting with Victoria tomorrow about the international expansion." "No. It can't wait. Julian, I'm pregnant." His reaction was not what she had hoped for. He stared at her for a long moment. Several emotions flickered across his face too quickly to read. Then he set down his phone and sat on the couch. "That's wonderful news," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. "Is it? Because you don't sound happy." "I am happy. Of course I am. It's just, the timing is complicated." "The timing is complicated? Julian, we're talking about our child." "I know. And I'm thrilled. Really. It's just that Victoria just arranged this crucial 3-month tour of international offices. It's a make-or-break opportunity for expansion." Isabel felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Your wife is pregnant, and you're worried about a business trip?" "I'm worried about our children's future," he replied, and she heard Victoria's words coming out of his mouth. "About making sure they have every advantage, every opportunity. Isn't that what good parents are supposed to do?" "Good parents show up, Julian. They're present. They don't miss their children's births for business opportunities." "I won't miss the birth," he promised. But Isabel no longer believed him. Sophie Marie Pierce was born on a crisp October morning after 9 hours of labor. Julian made it to the hospital just 20 minutes before she arrived, flying in directly from a business trip with Victoria. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket with messages he kept checking, even as Isabel labored to bring their third child into the world. When Sophie finally emerged, crying her first breath into the world, Julian held her for exactly 10 minutes before his phone rang with what he called an urgent situation at the office. "I have to take this," he said apologetically, handing the baby back to Isabel. "I'll be right back." He stepped into the hallway, and Isabel could hear his voice through the door, calm and focused on business while his newborn daughter and exhausted wife waited inside. He returned 20 minutes later. "I'm so sorry, beautiful. There's a crisis with the Tokyo office. Victoria's handling it, but I need to be on some calls. You understand, right?" Isabel looked at him holding their hours-old daughter and felt something fundamental shatter in her chest. "Sure," she said numbly. "I understand perfectly." That night, while Isabel slept fitfully in her hospital bed, and Sophie dozed in the bassinet beside her, Julian went back to the office for an emergency meeting that Victoria insisted could not wait. And in that moment, though she did not know it yet, Isabel's marriage was already over. What happened next would break her completely before teaching her to rise. The Harden family descended on the hospital the next day like vultures assessing fresh prey. Julian's mother Patricia arrived first, followed by his father Richard and Uncle Theodore. They came to see the new baby, but Isabel quickly realized they were not there to celebrate her or congratulate her on the birth. Patricia swept into the room wearing a designer suit and an expression that could freeze water. "Let me see her," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. Isabel carefully handed over 3-day-old Sophie, watching as Patricia examined the baby with the detachment of someone evaluating merchandise. "She has the Pierce eyes," Patricia observed. "Strong genetics. Good bone structure. She will be beautiful when she grows up, assuming she is raised properly. The implication hung in the air like a threat. Assuming she is raised properly. As if Isabel was incapable of raising her own daughter correctly. Richard Pierce approached the bassinet and looked down at Sophie with calculating eyes. Julian must be very proud, he said, speaking to his son rather than acknowledging Isabel. 3 children to carry on the family legacy. You have done your duty well. Duty. As if their children were obligations rather than miracles. As if Isabel was a broodmare who had performed her function adequately rather than a mother who had just brought life into the world through hours of pain and effort. Isabel, Theodore said, finally acknowledging her presence. You must be exhausted. 3 children now. That is quite a responsibility for someone from your background. Someone from your background. The insult was clear. I manage just fine, Isabel said quietly, keeping her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Of course you do, Patricia said dismissively. You are very focused on the children and household management. It is wonderful when a woman understands her priorities and does not get distracted by outside ambitions. The message was unmistakable. Isabel's role was to produce and raise children, while more important people, like Victoria, made the decisions that actually mattered in Julian's life. After they left, Isabel sat alone in her hospital bed, holding Sophie, and feeling more isolated than she had ever felt in her life. 3 months after Sophie's birth, Isabel returned home from the pediatrician to find her house had been transformed. She walked through the front door with Sophie in her carrier, calling out for Julian. His car was in the driveway, which was unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. Julian? She called. In your studio, he called back. But when she reached what had been her art studio, her personal sanctuary, she stopped dead in the doorway. The room was completely different. Her easels were gone. Her paintings had been removed from the walls. Her supplies, her canvases, everything that made it her space had vanished. In their place was office furniture, filing cabinets, a massive desk with multiple monitors. Victoria stood in the center of the room, directing 2 men who were installing additional shelving. What is going on? Isabel asked, her voice barely a whisper. Victoria turned with that perfect smile. Oh good, you are home. We wanted to surprise you. Julian and I decided that with the company expanding, he needed a proper home office. And since you have been so busy with the baby, we thought this room was not being used efficiently. This is my studio, Isabel said. Where are my paintings? We moved everything to the spare room upstairs, Victoria said cheerfully. I created a little hobby corner for you there. Much more practical for a busy mother of 3. You will have time for your hobbies once the children are older. Hobbies. She called Isabel's art hobbies. Julian walked in at that moment, carrying a box of office supplies. What do you think? He asked Isabel with genuine excitement, completely missing her devastated expression. Now I can work from home more often. Be around for the family more. Victoria thought of it. Of course she did. Isabel looked at her husband, really looked at him, and barely recognized the man she had married. This stranger wore Julian's face but spoke with Victoria's words. Made decisions that erased Isabel from her own home. Prioritized business over everything she held sacred. Where are my things? She asked quietly. 2nd floor. The small room at the end of the hall. Victoria set it all up for you. Did not she do a great job? Isabel climbed the stairs with Sophie still in her carrier. The small room at the end of the hall was barely bigger than a closet. Her paintings were stacked against the walls. Her easels had been folded and shoved in a corner. Her supplies were crammed into plastic bins. A small desk sat under the only window. On it, Victoria had left a note. For when you have time between feeding schedules. All the best, Victoria. Isabel sat on the floor of that tiny room, surrounded by the fragments of her creative identity, and finally understood the full scope of what was happening. She was being systematically erased from her own life, her home, her marriage, her identity. Everything that made her Isabel was being reduced to mother and housekeeper while Victoria stepped into the role of Julian's true partner in all matters of importance. That night, after she put the children to bed, Isabel went looking for Julian. She found him in his new home office, the room that used to be hers, on a video call with Victoria. They were laughing about something. An inside joke she was not part of. She waited in the doorway until they noticed her. I need to talk to you, she said. Can it wait? We are almost done with this presentation for the investor meeting. No, Julian. It cannot wait. He sighed and told Victoria he would call her back. When the screen went dark, he turned to Isabel with obvious impatience. What is it? You gave away my studio without even asking me. We needed the space. You have not painted in months anyway. Because I've been taking care of our 3 children, one of whom is only 3 months old. Exactly. You have more important things to focus on right now. You can paint later when the kids are older. This is just being practical. Practical. Victoria's favorite word. Julian, do you hear yourself? Do you hear how you sound? I sound like someone trying to balance a demanding career with family obligations. Victoria understands that. She has been incredibly helpful. Victoria has been taking over our lives, Isabel said. She moved into my studio. She schedules every minute of your day. She has you working until 10 or 11 every night. She goes on business trips with you. She sits in meetings where family decisions are being made. Julian, she has replaced me in every part of your life except the part where someone needs to watch the children. That is ridiculous, Julian said, but he would not meet her eyes. Is it? When was the last time you had a conversation with me about something other than the kids' schedules? When was the last time we had dinner together, just the 2 of us? When was the last time you touched me like you actually wanted me and not out of obligation? I have been busy, Isabel. Building a future for our family. I am sorry if you feel neglected, but this is temporary. Once the expansion is complete, things will settle down. No, they will not, she said. Because there will always be another expansion, another deal, another reason why Victoria needs you more than your own wife does. You are being paranoid. Am I? Then explain to me why your business partner's wife mentioned at Lily's birthday party that everyone at the company thinks you and Victoria are having an affair. Julian's face went pale. That is insane. Victoria and I are colleagues, business partners, nothing more. Then why does she call you at 11 at night? Why does she have a key to this house? Why does everyone in your world treat her like your wife and me like the help? Because she understands my world and you do not, Julian snapped. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Isabel felt something inside her chest crack completely open. There it is, she whispered. The truth you have been dancing around for months. I do not belong in your world. I am not good enough, not sophisticated enough, not connected enough. Just like Theodore said at our engagement party. That is not what I meant. Yes, Julian. It is exactly what you meant. She turned and walked out, leaving him sitting in her stolen studio. 3 weeks later, she overheard a conversation that would end her marriage. It was a Friday afternoon. Isabel had put Sophie down for a nap and sent Lily and Oliver to play in the backyard. She was coming down the stairs when she heard voices in Julian's home office. The door was partially open. She recognized Patricia's voice immediately. The question, Patricia was saying, is whether Julian is ready to make the changes necessary to fulfill his potential and secure his children's future. I believe he is finally starting to understand what truly matters, Victoria replied. It has taken time, but he is beginning to see that some choices made in youth might not serve him well in maturity. Isabel froze on the stairs, her heart pounding. Marriage is complicated, Theodore's voice added. Especially when people marry for passion rather than compatibility. Sometimes wisdom means recognizing when a situation has outlived its usefulness. The children deserve the best possible future, Patricia continued. And that means parents who can provide not just love but connections, opportunities, the right social environment for their development. Isabel's hands began to shake. They were not discussing abstract business decisions. They were planning the end of her marriage, the future of her children. As if she had no voice in either. What exactly are you suggesting? Julian's voice asked. He sounded uncertain. Torn. We are suggesting that you consider what would be best for everyone involved, Patricia said gently. You are still young, Julian. You have decades ahead of you to build the kind of life that would honor your family legacy and provide optimal opportunities for your children. Sometimes, Victoria added, the most loving thing parents can do is make difficult decisions for their children's long-term benefit. A stable two-household arrangement with parents who are better suited to their respective roles can be healthier than one household filled with tension and incompatibility. Isabel could not breathe. She gripped the banister to keep from collapsing. I do not know, Julian said slowly. Isabel is a good mother. The kids love her. Of course they do, Victoria said soothingly. And she would continue to be their mother. No one is suggesting otherwise. We are simply talking about restructuring the family arrangement so that everyone can thrive in their proper environment. You mean divorce? Julian said. The word fell like a bomb into the silence. We mean freedom, Theodore corrected. Freedom for you to build the empire you are capable of building. Freedom for Isabel to focus entirely on the children without the pressure of trying to fit into a world she was never prepared for. Freedom for your children to benefit from both parents operating at their highest potential rather than one parent being held back by an incompatible marriage. Think about it, Patricia urged. Just think about what we have said. Isabel did not wait to hear more. She backed silently up the stairs, went into the bathroom and locked the door. Then she sat on the floor and cried as quietly as she could, one hand pressed over her mouth so the children would not hear. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. Isabel was feeding 6-week-old Sophie in the kitchen while Lily and Oliver ate their breakfast. The domestic scene was so normal, so ordinary, that the catastrophe about to unfold felt like violence against the universe itself. The doorbell rang. Isabel transferred Sophie to her bouncer and went to answer it. A man in an expensive suit stood on her porch, holding a manila envelope. He could not meet her eyes. Mrs. Pierce? Yes. I am required to serve you these divorce papers. I am very sorry. He handed her the envelope and practically ran back to his car, as if her pain might be contagious. Isabel stood in the doorway, holding papers that would legally end 6 years of marriage. Behind her, she could hear Lily helping Oliver pour more cereal. Normal childhood sounds. Happy sounds. The sounds of a family that was about to be shattered. She opened the envelope with shaking hands and began to read. The petition for divorce painted her as an unfit wife. A woman who had trapped a successful man, who had become unstable after the 3rd pregnancy, who could not provide the lifestyle and opportunities the Pierce children deserved, who lacked the social connections and sophistication necessary to be a proper partner to a man of Julian's stature. Every beautiful thing about their marriage had been twisted into evidence of her inadequacy. Every moment of happiness reframed as her manipulation. Every choice she had made presented as proof of her limitations. The settlement terms were insulting. Minimum child support required by law. No alimony because she was capable of returning to work. A custody arrangement that gave Julian every other weekend and 1 evening per week. She would have 30 days to vacate the premises. All joint accounts had been frozen pending settlement negotiations. There were also allegations, serious allegations about her fitness as a mother. Claims that her postpartum depression, which she had never actually been diagnosed with, made her a danger to the children's emotional well-being. Suggestions that her limited social network and working-class background would restrict the children's future opportunities. Mama, why are you crying? Lily appeared at her side, her gray eyes wide with concern. Isabel quickly folded the papers and forced a smile. Mama is fine, sweetheart. Just some grown-up paperwork that made me a little sad. Nothing for you to worry about. Did someone hurt you? The question broke her heart. No, baby. No one hurt me. Go finish your breakfast, okay? But as Lily walked away, Isabel knew she had just told her daughter a lie. Someone had hurt her. The man she had loved with her entire soul had just tried to destroy her in the most calculated, cruel way possible. Her hands shook as she picked up her phone and called a divorce attorney. A friend from the library had given her a name once, saying, just in case you ever need it. At the time, Isabel had laughed and said she would never need it. The attorney, a woman named Sarah Chen, listened to Isabel's story with the weary patience of someone who had heard similar tales too many times. Mrs. Pierce, I will be honest with you. Your husband has significant advantages in this situation. He has superior legal representation, established financial resources, and what appears to be family support for his position. If he is willing to make character attacks against your parenting, this could become very ugly very quickly. But I am a good mother, Isabel protested. I have devoted my entire life to my children. I believe you. But family court is not always about truth. Sometimes it is about who can present the most compelling narrative. And wealthy men with powerful families often have resources that struggling mothers simply cannot match. So what do? You fight as hard as you can. You document everything. You stay calm and composed. You do not give them any ammunition to use against you. and you prepare yourself for the possibility that the outcome might not be what you hope for. After the call ended, Isabel sat at her kitchen table and stared at the divorce papers, at the allegations, at the settlement terms that would leave her with almost nothing. Then she checked her bank account online and discovered that Julian had already frozen everything. The account that had held their savings, the emergency fund, even the household budget, all frozen by court order. She opened her wallet and counted her cash. $43. That was all she had in the world. She was about to become a single mother of 3 with no money, no legal representation she could afford, no family, wealth to fall back on, and a husband who was apparently willing to destroy her reputation to get rid of her. For the first time since this nightmare began, Isabel felt true despair. That afternoon, Victoria appeared at her door with tea and sympathy that felt more like mockery than comfort. "Isabel, I heard about the divorce papers. I want you to know how sorry I am that things have reached this point." Isabel stood in the doorway, not inviting her inside. Are you really sorry, Victoria? Or are you exactly where you planned to be from the moment you walked into Julian's office?" Victoria's perfect mask slipped for just a fraction of a second, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "I understand you are upset, but this situation is not anyone's fault. Sometimes marriages simply run their course. Julian has evolved beyond where he was when you met. That is not your fault. It is just reality. 6 months ago, my marriage was perfect. My husband loved me. My children were happy. Our family was unbreakable. Then you arrived. Isabel, I think your hormones might be affecting your judgment. Postpartum depression can make women see threats where none exist. Perhaps it would be better if you focused on what is best for the children, rather than trying to blame others for problems that already existed." The gaslighting was expertly delivered, suggesting Isabel was hormonally unstable, implying that the marriage problems predated Victoria, positioning herself as the rational adult concerned for the children's welfare. "What is best for my children is staying with their mother in their home. Is it though?" Victoria's voice became gentle, almost therapeutic. "The children have been so stressed by the tension in this house. Lily has been having nightmares. Oliver has been clingy and anxious. Maybe they need stability more than they need things to stay the same." The poison was delivered with surgical precision. Isabel had noticed that Lily seemed more withdrawn lately, that Oliver had been extra needy since Sophie's birth. But she had attributed it to normal sibling adjustment, not to some fundamental instability in their home environment. "Get out of my house," Isabel said quietly. "This is not your house," Victoria replied, her mask dropping completely. "Not anymore. You have 30 days to pack your things and leave. I suggest you spend that time preparing your children for the transition rather than fighting a battle you cannot possibly win." After Victoria left, Isabel locked the door and slid down to sit on the floor. Sophie started crying from her bouncer. Lily and Oliver appeared from the playroom, sensing their mother's distress. "Mama, what's wrong?" Oliver's little voice was frightened. Isabel pulled herself together. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and picked up Sophie. "Nothing is wrong, babies. Mama just needs to figure some things out. How about we have a special afternoon? Ice cream and a movie?" Their faces lit up, and Isabel felt her heart break all over again. These beautiful, innocent children had no idea their entire world was about to implode. That night, after the children were asleep, Isabel began the heartbreaking process of packing their belongings. She had called her mother's older sister, the only family member who might help, and learned about a small house that had belonged to her grandmother. "You can stay there as long as you need," her Aunt Margaret had said with the kindness of someone who understood desperation. "It is not much, but it is yours. Your grandmother always said it should go to family who needed it." As Isabel sorted through their possessions, trying to decide what they could take and what they would have to leave behind, she discovered something hidden in her mother's old jewelry box. Her mother had died 3 years earlier, and Isabel had kept some of her things in storage. Now, searching for anything that might have value, she found a manila envelope with her name written in her mother's careful handwriting. Inside were documents, bank statements, and a letter. Isabel sat on the floor of her bedroom and read words that made her hands shake. "My dearest Isabel," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then my worst fears about your marriage have come true. I prayed that Julian's family would eventually accept you, but I suspected they would try to destroy you if they ever found the opportunity." The letter went on to explain that Isabel's mother had quietly saved money throughout Isabel's childhood. preparing for the possibility that her daughter might someday need financial independence. She had also kept her grandmother's jewelry, pieces that were worth far more than anyone realized. The ruby necklace belonged to my grandmother, who survived the Depression by selling jewelry when times were desperate. The pearl earrings are antique, worth enough to give you a fresh start if you ever need one. I hid them because I knew that if Julian's family ever turned against you, they would try to take everything, including anything that might help you survive on your own. Isabel opened the small velvet bags with trembling hands. The jewelry looked ordinary at first glance. But her mother had included appraisal documents. The ruby necklace alone was worth $40,000. The pearl earrings, $25,000. There were other pieces too. A total of nearly $80,000 in jewelry that her mother had hidden specifically for this moment. My darling daughter, the letter continued. If the worst happens, remember this. You are stronger than you know, more talented than they will ever admit, and more worthy of love than anyone who tries to destroy you deserves to understand. Take care of those beautiful children. Build a life that makes you proud. And never let anyone convince you that you were not enough. You were always enough. They were just too small to see it. The letter was dated 3 months before her mother's death, written by a woman who had apparently seen the future with devastating clarity. Isabel sat in her childhood bedroom, holding her sleeping baby while her other children slept in the next room, and felt something she had not experienced in months. Hope. Not the naive hope of someone who believed in fairy tale endings, but the fierce hope of a woman who had just discovered she had the tools to build her own future. The jewelry gave her options. She could hire a decent attorney. She could secure housing. She could fight for her children without being completely destitute. But more than that, the letter gave her permission to stop trying to save a marriage that was already dead. Permission to protect herself and her children. Permission to walk away with her head high. The next morning, Isabel took the jewelry to a reputable appraiser who confirmed her mother's valuations. Then she went to a different divorce attorney, one who came highly recommended and was not afraid to fight powerful men. His name was Marcus Webb, and he listened to her story with sharp, intelligent eyes. Mrs. Pierce, your husband is making a critical mistake. He is underestimating you. He thinks because you are a small-town librarian with limited resources that you will simply accept whatever terms he dictates. But you have something more valuable than money. What is that? The truth. And a mother's determination to protect her children. Those are powerful weapons if we use them correctly. The legal battle that followed was brutal. Julian's attorneys painted Isabel as unstable, opportunistic, incapable of providing the lifestyle the Pierce children deserved. They brought in experts who testified about the importance of social connections and opportunities that only wealth could provide. But Marcus Webb was brilliant. He brought in teachers who testified about Lily and Oliver's happiness and stability. He presented evidence of Julian's increasing absence from the children's lives. He calmly dismantled every allegation about Isabel's mental state with medical records showing she had never been diagnosed with postpartum depression. And in one devastating moment, he called Victoria Ashford to the stand. Miss Ashford, you have testified that you are simply Mr. Pierce's business colleague. Is that correct? That is correct. And yet you have a key to his home? For business purposes. Sometimes Julian needs documents when he is working from home. You call him Julian, not Mr. Pierce. Rather informal for a business relationship, is it not? We have worked closely together. We have become friends. Friends who travel together extensively. Friends who have dinner together several nights a week. Friends who, according to multiple witnesses, have been seen being affectionate in public. We are not having an affair, Victoria said firmly. I did not ask if you were having an affair. I asked about the nature of your relationship. But since you brought it up, let me ask directly, are you in love with Julian Pierce? Victoria hesitated just a moment too long. That is not relevant. Answer the question, please. My personal feelings are not on trial here. But they are relevant, are they not? Because if you are in love with Mr. Pierce, that would give you motivation to encourage the dissolution of his marriage. To systematically insert yourself into his family life. To undermine his wife's position in his home, and his heart. Objection, Julian's attorney called. But the damage was done. The judge had seen Victoria's hesitation. Her discomfort. The truth written all over her carefully composed face. The custody ruling, when it came, was not everything Isabel had hoped for, but it was far better than what Julian had demanded. She received primary custody of all 3 children. Julian would have visitation every other weekend, and one evening per week. The child support was substantially higher than the minimum, and she was awarded a lump sum settlement that, combined with her mother's jewelry, would allow her to secure decent housing and start over. The day the divorce was finalized, Isabel stood in the courtroom holding 6-month-old Sophie, while Lily and Oliver waited with her aunt in the hallway. Julian sat at the other table with his expensive attorneys and his family. Victoria was not in the courtroom, but Isabel knew she was waiting outside. The judge signed the final papers and it was done. 6 years of marriage ended with a signature. As Isabel walked out of the courtroom, Theodore Grant stopped her in the hallway. "I hope you are satisfied," he said coldly. "You have just cost Julian everything." "No," Isabel replied calmly. "Julian cost himself everything when he chose ambition over love. I just refused to let him destroy our children in the process." She walked away with her head high, her children safe, and her future uncertain but finally her own. The apartment her aunt had mentioned was actually a small house in a working-class neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit a table for 4. It was a far cry from the colonial home with the wraparound porch, but it was theirs. Isabel moved them in with the help of her aunt and a few friends from the library. They could not take much. Just clothes, toys, some books. She set up Lily and Oliver in 1 bedroom with bunk beds. Sophie's crib fit in the corner. Isabel would sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. It was cramped and humble, and absolutely perfect because it was safe. Because Victoria's poison could not reach them here. Because they could heal. "Mama, why is our new house so small?" Lily asked the first night, looking around with curious eyes. "Because this is what Mama can afford right now," Isabel answered honestly. "But you know what? We are going to make it beautiful. We are going to fill it with love and laughter and happy memories. And someday, when you are grown up, you will remember this little house as the place where we learned how strong we really are." Julian came for his first scheduled visitation the following weekend. He arrived in his Mercedes, looking uncomfortable in the humble neighborhood. He took Lily and Oliver for exactly the court-mandated 4 hours, then brought them back. He never asked to hold Sophie, never asked how Isabel was managing. Just fulfilled his legal obligation and left. After he drove away, Oliver climbed into Isabel's lap. "I do not like going with Daddy anymore." "Why not, sweetheart?" "Because he does not really want us there. He just does his work on his computer. And the lady is always there." "The lady? Victoria." "Well, you only have to go if you want to," Isabel lied, knowing the court order said otherwise. "But you will always come home to Mama. Always." That night, after the children were asleep, Isabel sat at her tiny kitchen table and made a plan. She had approximately $60,000 left after securing the house and paying legal fees. It was more money than she had ever had in her life, but it would not last forever. She needed work. But more than that, she needed a future. She thought about her skills, her education, what she was truly good at. And she remembered a conversation from weeks earlier. One of her tutoring students had been struggling with college entrance essays. Isabel had spent hours working with the girl, helping her find her authentic voice instead of trying to sound impressive. The girl had been accepted to Princeton with a full scholarship. Her parents had tried to pay Isabel extra, but she had refused. Now, sitting in her small kitchen with bills piling up and a future to build, Isabel had an idea. The next morning, she registered a business name: Monroe Educational Consulting. Using her settlement money carefully, she built a simple website. She reached out to high school guidance counselors offering free workshops on college essay writing. She posted in parent groups about affordable college consulting services. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Parents who could not afford the expensive consultants were desperate for help. And Isabel discovered she had a gift for this work. She could see the story in every student. She could help them craft essays that were authentic and compelling. She could guide them through the application process with patience and genuine care. Within 3 months, she had more clients than she could handle alone. Within 6 months, she hired her first employee, a retired English teacher who shared her philosophy. Within a year, Monroe Educational Consulting had a reputation for getting results. Her students were being accepted into top universities. Her success rate was remarkable. And word was spreading. But it was not easy. Isabel worked 18-hour days. She tutored students after putting her own children to bed. She wrote recommendation letters at 2 in the morning. She stretched every dollar until it screamed. There were nights she went to bed hungry so her children could have full plates. Mornings when she cried in the shower from exhaustion. Moments when she wondered if she could actually survive this. But every time she wanted to give up, she would look at her children and remember why she was fighting. Year 2 brought enough income to move from the small house to a modest, but comfortable home with a yard where the children could play. It also brought devastating disappointment when Julian missed Oliver's 5th birthday party entirely, sending an expensive toy via courier instead of showing up in person. "Did Daddy forget about me?" Oliver asked, his lip trembling as he stared at the unwrapped gift. Isabel pulled her son close, rage and heartbreak warring in her chest. "Daddy is very busy with work, but I will never forget about you. Not for one single second of your life." By year 3, Monroe Educational Consulting had expanded into test prep and academic coaching. Isabel hired 2 more employees. Her client list included families from 3 states. Elite universities were beginning to recognize her name on recommendation letters. Julian heard about her success from a business associate whose daughter Isabel had helped get into Princeton. He showed up at her office unannounced, looking shocked to find professional success where he had apparently expected continued struggle. "This is impressive," he said, taking in her small but well-appointed office, the wall of thank you letters from grateful families. "What do you want, Julian?" Isabel asked, her voice professionally neutral despite the way her heart still stuttered at seeing him. "I wanted to discuss increasing my visitation time with the children." She knew immediately it was a lie. Victoria had probably suggested it would improve his public image. "The children are thriving in their current routine. If you want more time with them, perhaps start by actually using the visitation schedule you already have. You have seen them 4 times in the past year." Shame flickered in his eyes before pride covered it. "I have been busy building the company. And some of us," Isabel said quietly, standing to her full height, "build demanding careers while still showing up for our children every single day. Close the door on your way out, Julian. I have a meeting with a student who actually values my time." The victory was small but sweet. Watching him leave, realizing that the woman he had discarded as ordinary had become something extraordinary. Years 4 and 5 saw explosive growth. Isabel published her first book, The Authentic Application: Finding Your Voice in College Essays. It became a bestseller among parents and educators. She spoke at conferences, appeared on podcasts, developed online courses that brought her expertise to students worldwide. The money that had once been desperate struggle became comfortable, then abundant, then genuinely substantial. She bought a beautiful Victorian house with enough bedrooms for each child to have their own space, with a library that rivaled small bookstores, with gardens that bloomed in every season. "Mama, we are rich now, aren't we?" 11-year-old Lily asked, running through their new home with wonder. "We are successful," Isabel corrected gently. "Which means we worked hard, made smart choices and never gave up even when things were difficult. That is better than being rich, sweetheart." By year 6, Monroe Educational Consulting had evolved into Monroe Educational Enterprises. The company included test prep, college consulting, tutoring services, and educational content creation. Isabel employed 47 people across 3 states. She had been featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. She was being courted by investors who wanted to help her scale nationally. She had built something extraordinary from absolutely nothing. More importantly, her children had grown into confident, happy, resilient people. Lily, now 12, was serious and thoughtful. She read voraciously and wrote poetry that made Isabel's heart ache with its beauty. She wanted to be a writer, and Isabel had no doubt she would be brilliant. Oliver, now 10, was sunshine personified. He had inherited his mother's artistic sensitivity, playing piano and guitar with natural talent. He composed his own songs, and his music teacher said he had the potential for greatness. And Sophie, now 6 years old and absolutely fearless, was brilliant beyond her years. She read at a 5th grade level. She asked questions that made adults pause. She wanted to be a veterinarian and save all the animals in the world. None of them really knew their father. Julian came for his scheduled visitations maybe once every few months, staying exactly the required time before leaving. He sent expensive gifts for birthdays and holidays, delivered by courier. But he had never been present for a school play, a piano recital, a parent-teacher conference, or any moment that actually mattered. The children did not hate him. They simply did not know him. And somehow that was worse than hatred. Isabel was 34 years old, confident in ways she had never been before, running a multi-million-dollar company, and genuinely happy with the life she had built. Until the Saturday morning in October when her doorbell rang and Julian Pierce stood on her porch, destroyed by the choices he had made. Which brings us back to where this story began. Isabel stood in the doorway of her beautiful Victorian home, looking at the broken shell of the man who had once thrown her away. 6 years had not been kind to Julian. The expensive suit could not hide how gaunt he looked, how hollow his eyes were, how defeat hung on him like a shroud. "Please, Isabel," he said. "I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." "You need to talk to me? After 6 years of silence? After missing birthdays, Christmases, every moment that mattered? I know I have no right to be here." "You are absolutely correct. So why are you here, Julian?" His voice cracked. "Because Victoria is gone. She took everything. The company is bankrupt. I have lost it all. And you thought you would come here for what exactly? Sympathy? I just needed you to know that I was wrong. About everything." Isabel had dreamed of this moment. Of him broken and begging. Of him finally understanding what he had thrown away. But now that it was happening, she felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a calm, distant observation that the man who had once been her whole world was now a stranger who meant nothing. "Do you hear that?" she asked, as Sophie's piano playing drifted through the door. He nodded, tears starting. "That is Sophie. She is 6 years old now. She plays like an angel. She reads at a 5th grade level. She wants to be a veterinarian. And do you know what else?" He shook his head. "She does not know who you are. None of them do. You are not their father. You are just the man whose DNA they carry." She called her children to the door. Lily appeared first, 12 years old and beautiful. She looked at Julian with polite curiosity, like examining a stranger. Oliver came next, 10 years old with his mother's gentle eyes. He pressed close to Isabel's side, uncertain. And Sophie studied Julian with fearless assessment. "Children, this is Julian Pierce, your biological father." He wanted to say hello. The silence was excruciating. Then Lily spoke with devastating politeness. "Hello. Thank you for the birthday presents you send. The delivery driver is very punctual." Oliver said nothing, and Sophie with brutal honesty asked, "Are you the reason Mama cries sometimes when she thinks we are asleep?" Julian's face crumpled. Yes. I am so sorry. I made terrible mistakes." "Okay," Sophie said, clearly not understanding why this stranger's mistakes should matter to her. "Can we finish our pancakes now, Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart. Say goodbye to Mr. Pierce." "Goodbye, Mr. Pierce," all three chorused. Then they disappeared back into the house where their real life was waiting. Julian stood destroyed by the realization that his children were strangers who felt nothing for him. No anger, no longing, just polite indifference. "That is what you chose," Isabel said quietly. "They do not hate you. They do not miss you. They simply do not know you. And that, Julian, is the price you pay for abandoning people who loved you." She closed the door gently but firmly. Through the window, she watched him walk slowly to a beat-up sedan and sit there. For a long time, his shoulders shaking with sobs no one cared to comfort. And Isabel felt complete peace, not victory. Just the quiet knowledge that she had survived the worst and built something beautiful. 6 months later, Isabel stood backstage at the National Education Summit, about to deliver the keynote speech to 800 educators and parents. Her phone buzzed with a text from her children. "Mama, we are watching the live stream at home. You have got this. We love you. Lily, Oliver, and Sophie." She smiled, her heart full. The announcer's voice boomed through the auditorium. "Please welcome New York Times bestselling author, educational entrepreneur, and 2024 Woman of the Year, Isabel Monroe." The applause was thunderous as she walked onto the stage in a navy dress that made her feel powerful and beautiful. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "I want to tell you a story about failure, survival, and the unexpected gifts that come from having your life completely destroyed." She told their story, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with the wisdom of someone who had walked through fire and emerged as pure gold. 7 years ago, I was a small-town librarian who married a millionaire CEO. I thought I had found my fairy tale. We built what I believed was a perfect life. 3 beautiful children. A home filled with love. A marriage that felt unbreakable. She paused, letting the audience feel the setup. Then I learned that fairy tales sometimes end when the prince chooses his kingdom over his queen. When he listens to people who say she is not good enough for his world. When he trades real love for fool's gold, wrapped in ambition. I stood in a courtroom holding my 6-month-old daughter while lawyers tried to prove I was unfit to raise my own children. I was called a gold digger. I was painted as unstable, incapable, inadequate. I was thrown out of my home with 3 babies and told I would have to survive on the bare minimum. The room was silent. People told me I would not make it, that a single mother with no resources could not build a meaningful life, that my children would suffer because their mother was not connected enough, wealthy enough, sophisticated enough. She smiled. But I became both mother and father to my babies. I worked 3 jobs. I sold my mother's jewelry to hire a lawyer who would fight for us. I went hungry so my children could eat. I cried in the shower so they would not see my tears. And I built a business from our kitchen table that now serves thousands of families across this country. The applause began to build. Today, my company employs 47 people. My book has helped hundreds of thousands of students find their authentic voice. My children are thriving, confident, and completely loved. And the man who threw us away learned that the woman he discarded was worth far more than he ever deserved. She paused for impact. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this so that every person in this room who has ever been told they are not enough knows the truth. You are enough. You have always been enough. The person who could not see your value was simply too small to recognize a diamond. The standing ovation started before she finished her next sentence. A woman is never weak. She is the courage of her children, the fire of her home, the heart of generations. When life breaks you, rise higher. When the world calls you inadequate, show them your power. When someone tries to convince you that you are not enough, remember this moment and know that you are everything. I built an empire from a broken heart. I raised 3 extraordinary humans from the ashes of a destroyed marriage. I turned my greatest pain into my greatest triumph. And I stand here tonight as living proof that the end of everything can be the beginning of everything better. The applause was deafening. People were on their feet, crying, inspired. So tonight we celebrate not just success, but survival. Not just achievement, but the choice to rise. Not just my story, but every story of a person who refused to be diminished by betrayal. She raised her arms. To rising from the ashes. To rising from the ashes. The room thundered back. In the back row, unseen by Isabel, Julian Pierce sat with tears streaming down his face. He had driven 3 hours and bought a ticket to hear her speak, knowing she would have him removed if she knew. He listened to his story told as a cautionary tale, heard himself described as the villain who lost everything by choosing wrong, watched 800 people stand and applaud the woman he had thrown away. And finally, he understood what he had lost. Not just a wife, not just children, but the opportunity to be part of something rare and precious. A love that could have lasted forever, if he had just been strong enough to protect it. He left before the speech ended, unable to bear the weight of his regrets reflected in her triumph. Isabel never knew he was there. And that was exactly as it should be. Because this story was not about him anymore. It had not been for 6 years. It was about a woman who learned that the greatest love story is not about finding someone to complete you. It is about becoming so complete within yourself that you do not need someone else's validation to know your worth. Before I close, I want to speak directly to anyone watching who needs to hear this. If you have ever been told you were not good enough, this message is for you. If you have ever been replaced, discarded, or thrown away like you did not matter, listen closely. Your worth is not determined by who chooses or abandons you. Isabel's value never changed. Only Julian's ability to see it diminished. The end of something can be the beginning of everything better. Divorce was not the end. It was liberation. Your children learn more from what you do than what you say. Isabel's strength taught her children that they could survive anything. Success is the best response to betrayal. Not revenge, not bitterness. Building something beautiful. You are enough exactly as you are. Julian's family said she was not enough. She proved she was more than enough. Real love protects. It does not abandon. The difference between Julian's conditional love and Isabel's unconditional love for her children showed which love was real. Sometimes the people who leave do you the biggest favor. Julian's abandonment freed Isabel to become who she was meant to be. If this story has touched your heart, do not just watch. Engage. Hit that like button right now if you believe in the power of rising from rock bottom. Drop a comment telling me, what are you going to build from your struggles? What empire are you creating from your ashes? Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories because every single week we bring you narratives that remind you of your strength, your worth, your absolute power. Share this story with someone who needs to remember they are enough, someone who is rebuilding, someone who is fighting their own battle and needs to know they can win. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your perspective and remind you of who you really are. To every person watching who has been broken, betrayed, or discarded, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not damaged goods. You are a phoenix waiting to rise. You're not too old, too late, too far behind. You are exactly where you need to be to start building something magnificent. You are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by how you chose to stand up and keep walking. Rise, beloved ones. Rise from whatever ashes life has left you in. Rise so high that the people who destroyed you need a telescope just to see your feet. Rise until your success is the only answer you need to give. Rise until you are so complete within yourself that you do not need anyone's permission to know you are extraordinary. Because you are enough. You have always been enough. This is Cedar Light Love Stories reminding you that every ending is just a new beginning waiting to be written. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, keep knowing your worth. You are loved. You are valued. You are absolutely undeniably enough.